Greetings, my fellow hunters, and welcome again. Today, we will be excavating a dungeon of the deepest depths, figuring out its mysteries, and understanding why certain events have been happening. And no, I am not talking about Dungeon Meshi. That's a series that I'll be doing later in the future. No. I'm going to be talking about a little obscure anime that no one's been talking about called The Unwanted Undead Adventurer. As given by the title, it's going to basically be an interesting one. Very not unique, but still more interesting than an isekai this year. But anyway, my hunters, I digress. And as I always say, may the hunt begin. The story follows Renta, a low-level adventurer who is basically trying to make it big in the world by trying to become a mythical-class adventurer. You know, the highest rank adventurers in a lot of fantasy series. Yes. Basically, he's a low-ranking bronze adventurer that basically has had it bad for his luck for a while, until one day, out of pure either happenstance or fate or whatever you want to say it, he meets a dragon. I'm using those quotes, dragons, very loosely because it looks like no dragon I've ever seen, and basically wakes up as a skeleton, realizing that of his new unlife, he goes around killing other monsters in the dungeon and gaining experience and evolving, until basically he evolves into a ghoul, in which case he starts to get a bit more of his humanity back. After a while, he was able to evolve into a higher rank ghoul, and thus was able to leave the dungeon thanks to the helping an adventurer who was able to repay the kindness by getting him clothes and a curse mask that literally stuck to his face. Now, he must embark on an adventure to figure out the mysteries of why he's still alive, if you can call that alive, and figure out what that thing was that killed him in the dungeon. Because I assure you, there is no dragon I've ever seen, not even an undead one. Along the way, he has his friends, a powerful witch that basically helps him with things he doesn't understand, and certain allies that have certain interests with him, as well as allies that realize who he is. It's also interesting and also fascinating. A nice fresh break from isekais, if I'm going to be fair. There's no grandiose adventurer. He's not called upon to kill the demon lord or basically do something that just is explicably impossible. He's just a guy that's trying to figure out what the hell happened to him and try to reverse it if possible. Certain events did happen in the series that get him close to that, but I'm not spoiling it because it seems more interesting. And yes, I know the series is still going on and this might be a first impressions, but I have nothing much I want to talk about. Series I have watched really aren't interesting, but anyway. Yes, the story is not the holiest unique story and a bit generic at times, but sometimes a generic story with fun characters is sometimes what you need instead of an overpowered character that basically can swat everything. And yes, he becomes overpowered, but I think over the time he's earned the strength he gained, and not because a goddess imbued him with the power to defeat a god or something. It's just that he worked hard, he earned it. And frankly, that's more relatable than Mr. I was born with 10,000 abilities that I can basically slay a god with just a flick of my wrist. Yes, also interesting, and thankfully, not so boring half the time. So, with the story done, we're going to be obviously going to the next situation, which is the characters. And as per usual, we're going to be talking about the main protagonists and maybe a few sides. Actually, no, I don't think there are many side characters that are worth talking about in this series. So, basically, we're going to be just talking about the main protagonists, two of them, Renta and his witch friend. So yes, basically, let's start off with the main protagonist himself, Renta. So first up, we have Renta, the main protagonist of said series. Now, there is not much to note about Renta, despite the fact that basically due to some unfortunate mishaps, is where he gets killed in the beginning of the series and then turns into a skeleton, he has very little character beyond that. Yes, it's an interesting how he basically became a human, then a skeleton, then a ghoul, then basically a vampire. Did that in the first place. But that's not part of his character. Renta is the standard good person that's just trying to do good, and also has incredible knowledge because he has a new identity, and is basically pretending to be someone new, all the while being overpowered as heck because of some certain event that happened in this series. So frankly, Renta is not a very interesting character. He does have his friend, but that's not now. But the point is that when compared to other characters I've reviewed in the past, Renta's a fairly one-note sort of character that has a bit of a childish side to him, but in the end is barely harmless. Not exactly spicing up literature in any way or sort, but fairly harmless. Next, we have his love interest slash old friend Lorraine. Well, she's a slightly more interesting, as she was basically a powerful mage that decided to live in the countryside away from all the hibbaloo of the main capital and decided just to live a quiet life. She's actually good friends with Renta. In fact, she is basically his magical support and close ally in this situation, as she's the only one that knows, well, the other person who knows that he basically is a ghoul and cares deeply about him. Now, whether it's loving interest or as a big sister, I'm still debating that, but I'm more leaning to that she has romantic feelings for him. Because why the hell not? She's a fairly kind person that seems powerful. She cares about Renter a lot, but besides that, we don't see much of her except for the whole magical support thing. She basically is the person that we have exposition on what the world is like and how things are going. So she doesn't have much of a character. Maybe if they do a second season, they can spruce that up. But as of now, she's, again, a fairly one-note character. Nothing interesting to worry about, but I don't think she's that memorable. So my final thoughts on the characters is that it's a bit sadly a one-note situation. A lot of the characters are just one-and-done episodes and then not coming back. However, for the final 2 episodes, there is a certain character that might be reoccurring, but that was only for a couple of episodes. In the end, the characters are not fairly interesting, one note, and just serve the purpose of the plot. Nothing beyond that, nothing below that. A run-of-the-mill, basically. So, now that we've gone through the characters, let's head off to the animation to talk about it, because I've got quite a few not important things to say. So, when it comes to the animation, I have to say I'm not impressed, sadly. The animation is what we would call a bare bones work. Yes, it has quite a few spectacular moments, especially when it comes to the animations of the fighting and magic effects and particles, as we already know. But besides that, the magics and the animation is fairly basic. It doesn't really do anything amazing that's worth talking about, sad. And yes, I know that's a bit of a downer, but when you've got bare bones animations of the bare minimum, with a few highs and a few lows, obviously, it's hard to really say anything, honestly. It's nothing to be impressed about. It does its job, which you could say is perfectly fine, but there's nothing really spectacular about it. Oh well, I guess this is just the times that sometimes you can't always have great of everything, can you? Well, for the music, I'm gonna be brutally honest here. I don't like it. I feel like the music really doesn't anything special, and the opening and ending, especially the opening, I really don't like the opening. Now, you're wondering to ask why, it's a bit of a rap tune to it, and sadly for my personal tastes, I'm more of a rock fellow than a rapper. I know this is a bit petty, but my own personal tastes do inform how I think and feel, and I feel like I don't like the opening that much. It's not something I listen to on my spare time, unfortunately. It's something I just skip over because I don't like it and it's uninteresting. If it was something interesting, I would be talking about it. The rest of the music, like the orchestral soundtracks, is okay, fairly okay, nothing spectacular, and it does its job. The ending is forgettable, because I can't exactly remember it. And let's be fair, I don't think it's really going to win any Oscars at this point. So yeah, I feel like the music, along with the animation, is kind of its weakness points. Nothing I can talk about, but the music really just puts down me a bit, unfortunately. So, here's the million blood echoes question. Is the series worth watching? And my answer is no. No, it's not worth watching, frankly. It is got an interesting premise, but I feel like the premise is just woefully underused. Yes, the main protagonist is an undead, but that's not the first time we've had an undead protagonist. I would count Overlord, but yes, that's an isekai. And well, yes, it's not an isekai, and I will be singing its high praises that it's not an isekai fantasy. At the same time, it's so generically painful that it just feels like, what's the point of it? And sometimes you get your wish. You want some nice fantasy anime, but it's just too generic. And yes, it can be a power fantasy, but the character is not very fun. He's just a goody good two shoes with very little moral gray. Those would have been much more interesting, but sadly, he's neither that. Yet, if you want to watch the series, you can. It's available on Crunchyroll, after all. Not sponsored. And if you do want just something to pass the time that isn't going to challenge your understanding of philosophy and meaning, then this is hardly an offensive series. It's worth a watch, at least, to see what's go. And if they can do a second season, and it is good, I will probably recommend it. If it's good. If it isn't good, then I wouldn't. I'll post it somewhere. I think it's good or not. But regardless, thank you, my hunters. I appreciate the watch. I am happy that you were able to go this far. And if you liked and like it, and please like and subscribe. And please give me a follow as well on my Twitch. I'm always there every week. Also, follow me on my other social media sites, which will be down below. Discord link as well, and Twitter as well. Yes, I'm calling it that, not the other name. And as I always say, may the good blood guide your way.